The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on paying your sales tax in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration today. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you missed a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC, and here you can review any of our past tutorials and other topics and webinars. There's our tutorials, project management and accounting courses, and all of our weekly webinars. In a previous webinar, we discussed how to properly configure sales tax codes in Design Manager in order to charge your clients the appropriate sales tax. In fact, we even have that on our YouTube channel, as we recently added that as well. This week, we'll be discussing how to actually record payment to the various tax authorities. Now, I want to preface the conversation that I am not a sales tax professional by any means, nor is anyone at Design Manager. You always want to confer with your tax professional to ensure that you have the proper sales tax rates, tax responsibility, use tax liabilities, tax period, etc., necessary to correctly charge, record, and remit your sales tax. Recording the proper sales tax for your clients is the first half of the challenge. Next, you must remit payment of the accrued tax to all the tax authorities. Remitting your sales tax is one of the business functions where the manner in which you are paid or are planning on paying the tax authorities really determines how you'll record the method in Design Manager. Since the vast majority of states have some manner of electronic submittal, that's the method that we're going to focus on today. For example, the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue offers a website for you to input your sales and tax information, submit your tax form, the PA-3 in this case, and even provide payment. In fact, if your tax liability exceeds $1,000 for the period, you must use this site. By using this site, I simply remit total payment, and the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue handles the distribution of the payments to other local municipalities that levy a surtax on top of the state sales tax. I don't have to worry about sending individual debit or credit card payments, ACH transfers, what have you, to all the various municipalities. Why does all of this matter? Well, since I'm using the Department of Revenue's website, I might have accrued sales tax in Philadelphia or Allegheny counties, and I really end up only paying the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, and they redistribute all of the funds as necessary. So I don't need to have separate vendors for Allegheny, Philadelphia, etc. Now, if I was personally cutting checks to Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, Philadelphia County, Allegheny County, then I would need separate vendors for each. So you must really configure Design Manager to match your payment method. Since we've been charging our clients sales tax, we can assume that we already have our desired sales tax account or accounts created. To examine those, we'll go to our Accounting tab, General Ledger Frame, and here's our account glossary. And there are our sales tax accounts. Sales tax accounts will always be liability accounts. As you can see, the type is liability on our New Jersey sales tax account. Why is the liability? Well, the tax charge to the client is accumulated in this account until we're ready to pay the tax authorities, as we are doing today, at which time the liability is relieved. In other words, we are quote unquote liable for remitting those funds to some other entity. Our company has 3 sales tax accounts, one for each appropriate state, as that is the method that our accounting professional prefers it. I want to point out that this is just one configuration. Other companies may want all of the tax into a single tax account, tax liability account, regardless of the state or locality that is involved. Other companies may want to have individual accounts for every tax authority, including state and local municipalities. Every method is completely fine, and each has their particular strengths. When it's come time to remit our sales tax, be it monthly, quarterly, etc., the first step in the process is to run the sales tax report and see what tax authorities to which we need to remit payment. In our example, today, let's imagine that it's the beginning of April and we're going to be paying our March sales tax. So let's close our account glossary. To run the sales tax report, we're going to go to our AR or accounts receivable reports. And right towards the bottom, you can see our sales tax report, which I've already taken the time to use the Add to Favorites button and put it on my favorites list so we can access it easy. Now, the sales tax report window is very simple. It's simply asking for a date range. It always defaults to the current month, but you could change that, of course, if you're doing quarterly, etc. Since we're imagining that we're going to be running the March sales tax, this is working out perfectly for us. Let's go ahead and print the report. Let's increase our magnification here and see what information is available on this report. The report is going to list each invoice with a calendar date within the date range that we've selected on the report window, and it's going to group all of the invoices by the sales tax code associated with the project for which the invoices were created. So first, our first tax authority is our Sarasota County, and we have a single invoice. Most important for our discussion today is not only do we see the invoice itself, but we see the distribution to the various tax authorities. So with Sarasota, obviously that's in Florida, and like many Florida counties, there's it's subject to a local discretionary tax, in this case, 1%. So we can see that the state is being listed for their taxable amounts, as is Sarasota. Now notice, these are not totals. It's indicating what is the tax presence in each of the various areas. And then the state itself will be totaled as well. Our next tax code is for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Essentially, that means everywhere in the state that is not either Philadelphia or Allegheny counties. And we can see we have a few invoices for one of our clients' Pocono home. And since the Commonwealth is a very simple tax setup, it's only 6% against everything. So there's a single rule as opposed to what we saw in Sarasota County. Lastly, we have some invoices for a client in Philadelphia. So now again, we're going to be seeing our 6% for the Commonwealth and an additional 2% for Philadelphia County. So according to our sales tax report, we're going to have to remit our collected sales tax to a few different authorities. Whenever we are sending payment, you always must have a vendor in Design Manager, of course. We can access our vendors right from our lists and glossaries, vendors and payees. And we can see I have a few vendors already that I've created for the state of New Jersey and the state of Pennsylvania. One thing I do like to point out, let's take a look at our Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. On the Defaults tab of the vendor window, I've taken the time to already associate my Pennsylvania sales tax liability account in the default expense account. What this does is it minimizes any chance of using the wrong account when I'm recording payment to the tax authority. Since I have it recorded on the vendor itself, when we're going to make our operating expense, which we'll do quite shortly, the account will already default for us, minimizing any errors. Now, let's imagine that we just recently established our sales tax presence in Florida, so we still need to create a vendor for the Florida Department of Revenue. Very easy. We just click our Add button, make a code, Florida Department of Revenue. And again, I'll take the time to use my Defaults tab, go to my default account, and select our Florida Sales Tax Collected Liability account. And that's all the information I'm going to need for this particular vendor, though I could put in tax as the type and perhaps operating as the account, as the category, to be consistent with our other tax authorities. And there we go, just that easy. Now, For our discussion today, let's say that we're going to be using both Florida and Pennsylvania's websites to input and file our sales tax forms. To do so, we're going to go back to our sales tax report and take a look at the information it provides that is essential for filing on those tax authority websites, most notably all of the total sales and the taxable sales for each authority. So back to our Sarasota County invoice. We can see, again, the total for the state for that invoice and the total for Sarasota County. Now, notice, why is the taxable sales different for those two entities? Well, for Sarasota County, only $21,000 is taxable under the rules we've configured for our Sarasota County sales tax code. So let's take a look at that briefly. Again, we discussed this at length in a prior webinar on setting up sales tax codes, but it's worth reviewing briefly here as well. Let's take a look at our Sarasota County. And of course, we're going to have two rules, which we see that matches our sales tax report. We have the Florida Department of Revenue, a flat 6% across in our example, but we have a second rule for Sarasota County at 1%. And our calculation rule is saying it's 1% below 5,000 on each unit. And again, this is just an example, so don't take this as the rule per se for Sarasota County. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the invoice itself and to see how we're design managers automatically coming up with these non-taxable and taxable sales for Sarasota County. So let's hop over to our client invoices, existing tab. Let's jump down to that invoice. And here we go. So we have 3 items on the invoice, which I have descriptions that are sort of using as examples of the various tax schemes for each of these items. If we get our handy calculator, we can see where we're coming up with the $21,000 in the sales tax appropriately for Sarasota. Now, we have one item that's more than $5,000. So in our rule, Sarasota County is only going to be taxing up to $5,000, not the total not the total $7,000. So 1% of $5,000 would of course be $50. Our next item is less than $5,000. It's an even $4,000. So that entire thing would be subject to the 1%. So that would be another $40. And then we have the more complicated example of 4 pieces that are not considered a set, perhaps 4 separate pieces of artwork. Well, the total price is $12,000, but each of those individually have a unit price of $3,000. So they would all be taxed at the 1% because they're not a set. So that full $12,000 would be taxable. And if we take our calculator, do our 50, our 40, and our 120, we come up with $210 for sales tax. And the only portion of the invoice that's not being taxed is the additional $2,000 on our first item, hence the $21,000. And back on our sales tax report, that is exactly what we see. So design managers handling this very complicated tax situation for you absolutely perfectly. Okay, besides our Sarasota County, of course, we saw that we have our Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, very simple, a few invoices, all of which is taxable at 6%. And then we have our Philadelphia County invoices as well, where both the Commonwealth and Philadelphia County are going to get a percentage. So the Commonwealth will be getting, even though the total is $713.19, the Commonwealth itself will only be taking $443.07 and $122.43, while taking $147.69 of that and remitting it to Philadelphia County for us. Since the Commonwealth is doing the redistribution of payments, it really simplifies the process for us. Okay, that's our tax report, and all those figures would be necessary on the websites to input the appropriate information to file your taxes. Now, there's another situation that may require a tax as well. Depending on the state or states within which your company does business, you may be required to remit what is known as use tax as well. Use tax applies when you're making a purchase outside of the state in which the business resides, whereby no sales tax is assessed, provided, of course, you're not reselling the property you purchased. Essentially, you can think of it as the tax you would have been charged had the merchandise been purchased in state. Okay, that sounds complicated. It's really not. Let's take an example. Let's say that I bought some business cards from Vistaprint that were $100, and I purchased them online. Now, if I purchased them in New Jersey, where the design business is located, I would have been charged 7% tax for a total of $107, of course. Though Vistaprint did not charge me this tax, I'm still required to remit the 7% use tax to the New Jersey Department of Revenue or Taxation. So let's take a look at that bill that I've recorded for Vistaprint, and you can see how I've configured it. So we'll go to our vendor invoice, bills and invoices, existing tab, and here's our Vistaprint. I'm just going to edit that, and you can see I have two distributions here. One for office supplies at $107, and then this unusual minus $7 for our use tax. Notice first that the amount due is $100. That is truly what Vistaprint charged me. So our operating expense here reflects that fact. But I know that the state is going to want me to put that $7 as use tax. So my total expenditure really is $107 for our office supplies. Our minus 7 is balancing our use tax liability. Basically, we're storing this in our use tax liability account until we pay for it. In fact, let's take a look at our accounts again. We'll go down to our use tax liability account, and if I use the balances button here, I can see there is a balance of $7 in that account. That's the $7 of quote unquote tax that we should have gotten charged. So if you're required to record and file use tax, you're going to want to print another report. And that would be under our general ledger reports, the account inquiry, again, which I've used the favorite button to attach to my favorites list. And I'm going to print an account inquiry for our use tax account. This is the current period that we're looking for, so that's great. And we can see on our account inquiry report, just like our balances window, there is our credit of $7 waiting for us to pay for it. So that's another report that you would need with your sales tax report. Sales tax report and the account inquiry for your use tax account. Between those two reports, we really have all of the information we're going to need to fill out our sales tax forms. So after we go online and we fill out our sales tax form and provide payment, let's say we used the company American Express account to do so. We need to record that in Design Manager to keep our accounting accurate. To do so, in our example today, we're going to need to make 3 operating expenses, one each for Florida and Pennsylvania sales tax, and another for New Jersey for our use tax. And the creation of them is very simple. So we're going to go to our accounting tab, accounts payable, and back to our bills and invoices, and we're going to add a new one. The type is going to be expense bill or miscellaneous. I said we purchased it on our American Express, great. And let's first do our Florida Department of Revenue. So we'll use our brand new Florida Department of Revenue. Invoice number, well, of course, is not really an invoice number, so I'm just going to put in perhaps the period. Great. Invoice date, let's imagine that it's, I don't know, April 3rd. Transaction description, March 2018, Florida sales tax. Fantastic. And again, for those of you who have seen our webinars in the past, the transaction descriptions are optional. I'm a huge fan of them since I need to review information that I may have entered in months or even years prior. This is going to tell me exactly what I was doing at the time. Now, for every operating expense, we need to have an account distribution. So we're going to click the green plus sign, add button, and there it is, conveniently displayed for us is our Florida sales tax account, really minimizing any mistakes we could make. The account comes up for us, so I know I don't need to change it. And the amount is going to be the amount from our sales tax report. And we can see for Florida, the total is $1,590, and that is what we will be paying today. But let's imagine, quite often the state or the third party that's running the website, or both, quite honestly, may levy a fee for the convenience of using the sales tax filing system. This fee also needs to be recorded. Hypothetically, let's say the fee is 1% of the tax remittance to make our example easy today. So not only am I paying my $1,590, I need to pay another $15.90 for a fee. So I'd add a second distribution, and in this case, I would use bank service charges is fine. Bank service charges and fees, fantastic. And I could use our $15.90. Click OK. And now our total of $1605.90 is going to be exactly what we were charged when entering in the information on our tax authority site. Click OK, and there we have our first of our 3 tax authority operating expenses. And let's finish up the others as well. We'll add another for the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, paid with American Express, Ender, PA Department of Revenue, invoice 3-17 to 3-31. Copy that guy. Again, let's say it's April 3rd, transaction description March 2001-8. Whoops. PA sales tax. Click our add button. We have our tax collected for Pennsylvania already showing up for us. Fantastic. Take a look at our sales tax report, and the total for Pennsylvania is $713.19. And let's imagine that that website's also charging us a 1% fee. I can go ahead and click OK, add, put our bank service fees charges in there, and we'll input our $7.13. Fantastic. And now we have both of our sales tax ready to post and indicate as payment. But we still have our New Jersey use tax to handle. So we don't have any sales tax in New Jersey for this period, but we do have that $7 of use tax. How do we pay that? Very similar. We're going to add another expense. Put that on our Amex, state of New Jersey. March 2018 use tax, NJ. Click our add button. But now we don't want to use our sales tax account. We want to use our use tax account. And that would be our $7. And if they had a fee as well, we could put that in. 70 cents, and we're ready to go. There are our 3 payments that we're going to be recording for our sales tax in Florida and Pennsylvania and our use tax in New Jersey. If we go ahead and post those, let's see what happened. Let's go back to our account glossary, drop down to our our liability accounts. Now, our New Jersey, we didn't do anything with. Pennsylvania, we can see that all of the account balances have netted to zero. And if we look at our account glossary, our account inquiry report, let's use our use tax as an example. We can see there is our use tax from our business cards, and we're relieving or paying the account with our operating expense. And the same for any of our sales tax accounts as well. Look at Pennsylvania. We can see our invoices going in, increasing our liability, and our operating expense debit or relieves the account, making our ending balance zero. That's a very simple method to maintain and enter all of your tax information into Design Manager. As you invoice your client, it gets accumulated into the sales tax accounts appropriately, and then we use operating expenses for each of the tax authorities which are required to remit payment to actually pay all of the sales tax authorities necessary. And that brings us to our conclusion of our discussion today, where we tried to go over properly configuring and remitting payment for sales tax by examining the sales tax report to see what tax authorities are owed tax. We use the account inquiry report to see if we need to remit any use tax, if applicable in your state. Then we recorded our payments for the authorities with very simple operating expenses to offset or alleviate the sales tax liability accounts. And we even showed how to input any service charges associated with the payment as well. And with that, I thank you all for joining the discussion today, and I hope you attend another of our free webinars in the near future. Take care and have a great day.